Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chakra Alchemy. My name is Tashmich, and I'm a chakra alchemist. And today I've got Mike Iameli with us, and I'm such a huge fan of this guy's work. He's every time I see what you do, Mike, it kind of makes me want to be better, and I love when people do that with me. I'll just give you a little bit of a short on what he does. Mike Iameli is an author, a coach, and a mentor for spiritual entrepreneurs. He's passionate about helping spiritual entrepreneurs understand the game of entrepreneurship is actually weighed heavily in their favor. They've just been playing by outdated rules. Smart, effective, and successful marketing actually has a basis in strong energetic principles. And he believes that each individual has a unique and unmistakable way that energy flows for them, what he calls brand energies, and that by mapping and aligning with your flow of energy, you can create incredible success without striving or hustling. Through his renowned sacred branding work, as well as his provocative, and I love that, provocative sacred circles, Mike has helped hundreds of entrepreneurs at every level of business to completely reconceptualize the way they think of branding, making money, building a business, and even life purpose. Mike, welcome. It's fabulous to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So basically, I would love to take your work from a solar plexus point of view because the solar plexus chakra is really about us owning who we are and us sort of standing in our own power and really kind of rooting ourselves and saying I am, and whatever that follows that is coming very much from the solar plexus energy. It's our identity, our will, and how we personalize who we are into the world, basically. And a lot of your work is really sort of getting a concentrated element of what someone is there to present into the world and allowing them to really do that in a way that feels authentic to them, that feels genuine to them, and really represents their souls and where they're coming from. So yeah, just tell me, when you think of this, the solar plexus, we'll start with the solar plexus chakra and your work. When you think of the solar plexus, what comes up for you with the work that you do?
So many things. From my perspective, the solar plexus is the seat of the soul. So it's really where the soul sits. It's where, it's not ego identifying, but the soul does have some attachments. We have certain modes of expression that we want to communicate in this world. And so when I think of the solar plexus, I really think of the place of how am I separate from you? Like, who am I? How do I conceptualize my role here? What purpose do I have to put out here? And for us energetically sensitive people, we've been given so many communication, so many language around why we shouldn't be the things we are. So we've probably all heard we're too sensitive or too emotional or too intense or too angry. And what's really happening is the people around us and maybe even ourselves actually can't handle that level of power. So we've come in with a really strong solar plexus that we've been told to shut down immediately. And we have shut it down immediately. And because it hasn't been safe to be ourselves, we've projected out from that energy center into other people's fields to make sure we feel safe. And the second we do that, we get all wonky and tangled with their energy and bring it right back in. And that's a reason why we're all people pleasers, why we are so afraid of what others think, because we've been told for so long that it's not safe to be ourselves. And then when we go to feel if it is safe, we end up taking others' energies on for us. So for us energetically sensitive people, this is a center that I find is one that has a lot of confusion and damage to it because we're so sensitive. We do have a lot of power, and being able to maintain that authenticity in a world where very few people have the courage to be authentic themselves is really, really challenging. So there's a lot we can say about that, but that's kind of a starting point for us.
Yeah. And the bit that I really love, the piece that I love with all of this is it actually really, we begin to hone down on who we mean to ourselves, what we really represent in terms of our work to ourselves. Because to a large extent, sometimes when we're so outward focused and outward pointing, it's not a question that we ask, what does this mean to me? How is this sitting with me? What is authentically me? It's not something that we always ask. And sometimes we find that line of questioning can be quite selfish, or we get told that it's quite selfish to do that, to take the time and to really create a space to allow yourself to question, who are you? Who am I?
Totally, absolutely. And I think part of the confusion comes in is, we are not our human form. We are not even our soul. We're much bigger. We're this one collected bunch that has split into individual perspectives of the universe, or what we call souls, to learn specific lessons. And so because we are the overarching consciousness, we can play any role really, really well. Like, you give us a script, we can be the best actor, and we can channel that role. However, just like all things related to attunement, some roles are going to be more naturally attuned to our energetic frequency, our original blueprint, our soul, and some are not. And we see that all the time. We see people, they can be an amazing, corporate executive. Like, they can play that role great, but it is exhausting. Yes. And the reason it's exhausting is it's not well attuned to their natural frequency. Yes. So they're constantly needing to change their system during the day when they're doing that, and then come home at night and recharge as who they truly are. And so much of my work is seeking to really remove some of the stories about us being too sensitive, too emotional, too intense, and begin to understand what is the natural attunement of your soul, so that you can show up in every single moment just being who you are. And it's not effort anymore. It's just you being yourself, and you're opening energetic lines or energetic pathways so that abundance can flow to you.
Absolutely. I love that. So let's start with the base chakra. The base chakra for me is one of those chakras where we can get so much energy in terms of solidity, in informing us of security, informing us that we're held, that we're supported. But a lot of times, when it comes to the solar plexus chakra, and especially like you were saying, that sort of projection that comes from a sense of not feeling like we're aligned, not even knowing who we are, so we're projecting outwards from who we think we should be, or who the world tells us we are. We also project into the earth and basically bombard the earth with demands that come from the ego, basically. And one of the things that I've been doing a lot with the work that I'm doing is basically tuning people into just allowing the earth to inform them, allowing the energy of the earth to inform them. So when we take your work, when we take that sort of that self-knowing work that you're doing with people, especially around their businesses, and we actually look at it from a base chakra point of view, what comes up for you?
The first thing that comes up for me are two things, but one main one is embodiment, and the second one is support and safety. And so from an embodiment perspective, we energetically sensitive people have trouble staying in our bodies, and I've got that issue. And so, to manifest, when we're on this plane, the only thing that is real, that is in the present moment, is your body. Like, when you are fully here, then, you're not thinking 10 minutes down the road, you're not thinking about the past, you're in this moment, and that's when you have your full power to manifest on this plane. And we forget that, I think. So when, it's very easy for me to talk about or to conceptualize the energies of a person. For example, if some of her energies may be connected and free and powerful, that's great and that's wonderful to conceptualize, but how can we embody and create that right now in this moment? Mm-hmm. How can my body feel connected in this moment? Can I feel connected to my legs? Can I feel connected to this human being that I'm hugging? Not going through the motions, but actually feeling the embrace, allowing the energy to exchange. Can I feel connected to the divine in this moment? As I begin to bring those down and start to embody these things, I actually am calling more of my power forward. And this is something, many of us have, we can get into soul retrieval work here, because many of us have trauma that keep us in the past, or keep us from wanting to be fully present in our body. And a lot of my work seeks to actually say, that's wonderful, I honor that, but my energy is not there. I call it back to me now. And so a lot of my work actually seeks to do the soul retrieval that many of us are unaware of, that are keeping us from wanting to be in this present moment, so we can do what we came here to do and manifest our purpose in the physical form.
That's such a big one, isn't it? Because we have so many ways of distracting ourselves in this here and now world, because basically we don't want to be right here, right now. It feels uncomfortable in the body. And to a large extent, the nervous system for me plays a huge, massive part in this whole embodiment piece. Because if our nervous system is kind of like geared to high alert, then there's no way you're going to want to be in the body. And exactly what you're saying about the retriever work and bringing all these elements of ourselves back so we feel whole and we feel like we could actually sink in and be where we are right now is such a big piece, isn't it?
And I love what you're saying about the nervous system because for me, that's the psychic highway. You know, that's how we react to and sort out stimuli in the world. And for us, energetically sensitive people, us very powerful people, you know, when someone tells me they're sensitive, I immediately say, okay, you're powerful. That's what you're trying to say to me because we come in with a lot more energy and we have a lot of energy. And just like we talked about in the solar plexus, we've been told you're too intense, too emotional, too sensitive. So we try to shut it down when actually I think every powerful person I've ever met has an insanely sensitive nervous system. I do, and it can get stress caught so easily. Yeah. So it's even more work for me to bring that level of power into my physical form and then make it accessible to the world. Yeah. When we talk about the word accessible, so often we think, oh, it's easy to understand. But from my understanding of it, that's not what it means. Accessible means I've pulled it from the ethers through every chakra of my body down into my root, and I'm so physically embodying it that now you have access to that energy. I've brought it here to this plane, and that's part of my work here. So, so us sensitive people that are very, very powerful, we have even more work. We have double duty to be able to bring even more power through us, and that's why we have such a sensitive nervous system.
Yeah. Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. I love that. And the embodiment, for me, when you talk about embodiment, is really no longer thinking or conceptualizing, but really being. And when it comes to work, that's a big part of the puzzle right there, isn't it? Can we be what we're sort of like speaking about into the world, and we're kind of like, you know, wanting our clients to be? Can we actually be that?
Well, it's so great you just said that because in my line of work, I have 3 levels of energetic integration. So the first one is, you know, when I learn something new, I'm going to keep it on a kind of third eye, maybe throat chakra conceptualization place. If you say, Mike, you're intuitive, I'm going to say, is that true? How does that match with my belief system? What do I think about that? Like, that's staying up here in the conceptualizing. Yeah. Then, if it sinks in a little bit deeper, integrates deeper, I might have a visceral reaction to it. I might start to feel something. It might be more of a heart or what I consider a solar plexus area where I'm like, like I'm having a reaction to it. It's a little bit stronger. And then, when it gets to a full embodiment all the way down to the root chakra, what I see is it's no longer separate from me. So if you say, Mike, you're intuitive, I'm like, yeah, I have brown hair, so what? Like, that's not something I can see as outside of myself anymore because it's so fully embodied. And so when we're talking about the root, we're talking about that final level here where one of your energies is the word successful. You don't have to conceptualize it. You don't have to fight your belief system anymore. You don't have to reach certain milestones. You don't have to feel successful. You don't have to look at all the abundance you have and feel it. Like it's just a part of you now. And when it's that fully rooted in who you are literally a walking god or goddess. You walk down the street and you don't have to say a word. People can feel the energy of success exuding out of you. And they will have that energetic gift now because of you. So my job is to help people identify what those energies are that they carry and help them to get to that full embodiment. Because at that point, running a business is really, really easy.
And fun, right?
And fun, yes, of course.
So when we move up to the sacral chakra, which is our feeling body, our emotional body, and it's also our creative center as well. The sacral chakra, for me, again, the nervous system really operates in the sacral for me because it kind of asks a question. How intimate can you be with another? How intimate can you be with your own work? How can you actually give your love and merge your energy in a way that you create in a loving way? So when you think of your work and you think of, you know, the sacral chakra, what comes up for you there?
The word containers. So for me, sacral is all about our relationship to things, whether it's our relationship to other beings, our relationship to objects, or the physical world. And this is an understanding for me that, yes, we have these energies. You know, I am aligned, successful, free, zany, unmistakable, and vulnerable. Those are my energies, but they don't mean anything without a container. Mm-hmm. On this plane, we need a container for divinity to flow into. I have a human body for my consciousness to flow into. You know, I have a drink right here with my water flow into. Everything is about containers. And when so many people come up to me and they say, "Oh my God, Mike, I know my life purpose. I am a life coach." So that's wonderful. I want to honor that for you. However, I also want to point out that's putting a lot of pressure on being a life coach. What were you doing when you were a child? Did you just not have a life purpose? And, you know, what if you get bored with being a life coach? Like, that is a wonderful container for the energy right now. But I'm going to argue that you have been these energies throughout your entire life. You've just chosen different containers or different ways to relate to it and to create from it. And so from that perspective, we create containers all the time. We have created a sacred container for this conversation, for the energy to flow. I create containers for every single offering I give. I have containers for my one-on-one work. And so when I begin to understand this, it allows me to have healthy separation from the work because I am not my business. Yes, all of my energies are in my business, but it's a container to hold my energies at this particular time and place. And if I want to change my business, if I want to dump my business, I can do all of that because I have just a container, just like I am not my human form. When I one day die and go back down to the earth, my soul, my being will continue on because this is a container for that place. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does make sense. And the thing is that we can identify so fully with the container, exactly like you're saying. So our business becomes our life, becomes us, becomes everything about us, becomes who we are. And a lot of times, if anything happens with regards to that, we can actually either fool ourselves because we don't want to see the reality of, okay, this is shifting and changing here, you know, so what does that mean for me? And then it kind of throws everything up in the air. Whereas what you're talking about is if there isn't so much attachment to it, but more an honoring of the energy that moves through you that you've chosen to put in that context right now, it gives you a lot of power around what you're doing, doesn't it?
It does, and what it also does is it empowers your business as a separate entity. And I think that this is so important for our work. You know, I talk to my business all the time. I see it hanging out right by my left side over here. And I ask my business, okay, I'm asking you to make money for me. I'm asking you to do all these things. What do you need from me? Like, what do you need from me to be able to do your job better? And I have changed my wardrobe. I've changed, you know, I've gone to rolfing. I have, you know, changed my morning practices. I've had to do all these things for me to show up as the appropriate container for my business to be able to do its work better. And so even, you know, our physical body, our relationships, all of these things are unique containers we have to communicate our purpose. And sometimes they may not be the right containers for us, or we may not be showing up in the right way for those containers. And so it actually becomes really powerful because we begin to know how we need to change for our business. And that's really easy and fun.
Stunning. So when we bring this energy up and we bring it up to the heart chakra, which is basically for me the chakra of unconditional love, but it's also representing the chakra of giving and receiving. Like, how much can we receive? How much are we comfortable in receiving? And also, how much can we give wholeheartedly, generously, from a place of abundance? So when you're talking about that sort of sense of really getting your own identity in a way that is aligned with your soul, and you think of the heart chakra and you think of that sort of unconditional love element, what comes up there?
Value, the word value. And this is really important because it's actually a misnomer. I use this word all the time intentionally because it's a trigger. The idea of value is a man-made construct that actually doesn't exist in nature. No bird thinks, am I worth more or less than that snake? That does not happen. You know, we all have infinite inherent value. Because to believe that we have less than infinite inherent value believes that we actually don't believe in our divinity. And that's not true. We are all equally divine. We all have more value than we could ever conceptualize in the world. I mean, we all are the only thing that exists. And so when we understand that, that changes the dialogue on pricing and receiving and giving and all of these things, because it's no longer about how much is it worth. It's more about an energy exchange. Right now, and in every situation I have during the day, I'm exchanging energy. I'm breathing out carbon dioxide right now. My plant over here is giving me oxygen. We're exchanging just from sitting here. We are always exchanging energy. And right now, I'm giving you a certain amount of energy, and I'm also receiving a certain amount. Now, given the nature of the relationships and the nature of the containers we already talked about, sometimes those exchanges aren't going to be equal, which is perfect. If I'm a busy mom and I have a child with me, I'm probably going to give that child a lot more than it's giving back to me at this moment in time. There's nothing wrong with that, but knowing that means that I need to become really aware of energy exchange, because like the heart chakra works with the front and the back, if I'm giving, and never receiving in equal amounts, then I have nowhere to give from, and I'm tapping into life force energy. I'm literally giving away my life force. And what we see in that situation is things that come up. Resentment is the biggest. Anytime we're feeling resentment, we're talking about an imbalance between giving and receiving. But we'll see stress, we'll see burnout, we'll see anxiety, we'll see physical illness. These are symptoms that many spiritual and energetically sensitive entrepreneurs begin feeling. And this, what it really means, is an unequal energy exchange. So when I put out an offering, I tune in and I tell myself, okay, this is what's going to feel like. This is the financial investment. This is the energetic investment I'm making. This is how much promotion I'm going to have to do. What dollar amount feels equal? Is it $50? Is it $100? And I keep going up until I can feel the energy equalize. Once it equalizes, what actually happens on an energetic level is my energy system will open. Because what's happening is, if I charge you $2 to work with you for an hour, and that does not feel equal to me, and again, it's subjective, so it's really about what feels right to you, but if it doesn't feel equal to me, my energy system's going to start to close down. Because I basically trained it. Every time I give to others, I'm losing life force energy. And above all, my system is here to protect me from losing my life force. And this happens so frequently with spiritual entrepreneurs. They will undervalue themselves, the system will shut down, and they will actually actively stop trying to get clients. They don't know it, but their system is like, get away, I don't want any more, I'm losing energy. And more than that, when we're intuitive beings, we actually when our system shuts down, we can shut down from psychic and intuitive insights. And I have worked with so many psychics who, when they understand the energy balance, maybe they don't make more money right away, which is okay, but they've noticed that the psychic insights come fast and furious because they've now opened their system more, because they're not losing energy. So when I think about the heart chakra, I think a lot about our own infinite inherent value and our connection to one another, because we are all divine. And when we can take that conversation out of the equation, we can look at it purely as just an energy exchange. That some energy is going out and some energy needs to come back in and be received. Otherwise, I'm giving up life force. And if I understand that, then I can understand how to begin to engage in my work in a new way that is really more loving, more authentic, and allows me to show up more fully for my clients.
That's so much speaking to, I mean, when you talk about value, the piece there really is a self-worth element as well, isn't it? Because that is a big part in, I think, a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs, the value element is a big part. Simply because there's that feeling of wanting to give from the heart, wanting to give as much as possible. And that uncomfortability in the value element of you know, am I worth that much? What am I worth? You know? And this is where the heart chakra and the solar plexus are so connected. Because if we're not really sort of connected and rooted in terms of who we are, what we represent to ourselves, what we feel comfortable with of ourselves, and we're holding, you know, we're representing our soul fully from that place. There's always that kind of like interplay between the heart and the solar plexus, isn't there?
Totally. And you know, there's so many words that we use. Whenever I hear someone say, you know, oh, I don't know if I deserve it, or I don't know if I'm worth it, we're always talking about value. It's coming back to the exact same conversation here. And I love your conversation about the interplay between the solar plexus and the heart, because it's so important and so powerful here. And I'm going to actually loop the sacral here, because we just talked about containers. So often people will say to me, oh, I don't know how to price this because I'm only giving, 6 months of coaching. I don't know. I said, wait a minute, let's slow down for a moment. What are you actually giving this person? Because if you can truly make them feel the energy of successful, if you can gift them that energy, they don't care how you give it to them. You can wave your magic wand, you can give them some energy healing, you can throw them in a 6 month program. That's not what they're after. It's not the container, it's the actual energy. And that energy has infinite inherent value. There's no way we could ever put a price tag on that. There's no way we could ever, quote unquote, charge what we're worth. Because if I charge $1,000,000, why am I capping my worth at $1,000,000? Like, I have infinite inherent worth. So that is not at all what we're talking about here. I know that I'm giving you and our listeners right now all of the energies I can of success and vulnerability and freedom. These are things that I'm sharing. I have no idea. You could tell me right now, hey, Mike, you're a hack, you're worth 5 cents. Or you could say, oh my God, you're a genius, I'm going to go start a company and make $1,000,000. I don't know, and quite frankly, I don't care. It's not my business. But what I can do is say, well, I'm jumping on this call. I'm going to be energetic. I'm going to bring my A game. I'm going to give a lot of energy. What exchange do I need for that? Well, I know that I love Tash, so she's aligned. That's a yes. I know that I am going to be on my biomat relaxing later today and take a bath later. I'm doing all these things to equalize the energy because I want to really bring my A game. And if I'm not feeling equal, my energy system is going to shut down and I cannot bring my A game. Yeah. So you're right that there's a huge interplay here when we talk about the solar plexus, when we're talking about self-worth, because as we move into this space, we have to take the self-worth conversation out of the equation so that we can purely talk about an energy exchange and not look at it from a place of worth.
I love this conversation so much because it feels like you're shining a spotlight from an angle that actually you look at where the light's directed and you're like, I never saw it that way before. This is like this is a whole new way of looking at it, which is really, really brilliant. And it's one of the reasons, like I say, I have so much admiration for you and the work that you bring out, because it feels so aligned to the soul. And when we hear it, it feels a bit like our soul gets excited and we get excited because it's the piece that we were kind of like looking for but didn't quite find the words to say it. So thank you for that. Thank you for actually clarifying that.
No problem. And this is really, really fun. I think it's going to tie into when we're talking about the throat in a moment, because actually what we're talking about here is an activation. Yes. And so, I define activation as the soul remembering something. So I can't ever give you something that's not true for you. Yes. When it's true for you, what's happening is I'm helping to activate, but you're flipping a switch on the inside and you're actually up-leveling your own energy system. And we experience this through two primary ways. One is inspiration. So when we get inspired by someone, we're actually having an activation. But the second way is triggering. And that's the way none of us want to talk about or like. But we're seeing a misalignment with our soul. So our soul is recognizing truth and then recognizing its own misalignment, and there's some triggering going on there. But that's actually an activation as well, because it empowers us to step further into alignment or to not. And so I love what you're talking about here, because a good activation to me is the soul being excited. And any time we communicate or interact with another, as we're starting to talk about the throat chakra, that's an opportunity for activation. In fact, that's the only thing we need to be doing. We don't need to persuade or sell or do any of this crap, convince and fearmonger people into buying from us. All we need to do is activate them to a point where, if it's right for them, they can buy from us. If not, we just lovingly gave them an activation.
So when we talk about the throat chakra, because the throat chakra for me is kind of, I see the throat a bit like a piano, it plays the keys of all the other chakras, basically. We can speak from a place of grounded and a grounding, a place of love and a place of divine connection, for example. And it all comes through as kind of like a musical note on the throat chakra. So I feel like it allows us to express every element of the soul, every note of the soul out into the world. And this could be really conscious, or it could be sort of kind of like really unconscious, where we're just blasting the world with stuff, And what I love about the work that you do is bringing that consciousness into the throat, bringing that consciousness into the expression. So speak of what comes up for you in the throat when you think of your work, basically.
So many things. I mean, the word expression, there's an entire module in my sacred circle all about expression, as there is value and create is the container one. And in this, you know, we are often expressing, like you said, from an unconscious place.
Yeah.
And so it is amazing that I love what you just said about it being the notes or the keys of the piano, because we will see a lot of issues in other chakras showing up here in the throat. When I'm working with somebody, I will be able to see their solar plexus issues showing up by the way that they communicate, or their heart issues showing up by the way that they're communicating. And women especially, I work about 90% with women, in our culture have a really hard time asking for what they want. And it amazes me, being as intuitive as I am, because I will sit there, I will be working with a powerful woman and read what she said, and she won't ask me for what she wants from me, but I know what she wants. I'm like, wait, did she ask it? And I have to keep going back and reading the email again, because I got the message, I could feel the energy of it, but she stopped short of actually saying those words.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot, especially self-worth issues, start to come up. And so the expression place is actually a really beautiful place that we humans have to begin to identify the issues happening in other chakras, and also to reclaim the parts of ourselves that maybe have been left in the past. And so this is really where I begin to see the conceptualization of the stories we tell ourselves. So there's an authentic energy, and then there's a story we create to understand it. And if the stories we have are disempowering to us, we can always change the story around it, or the way that we are weaving the stimuli together to create meaning.
Yeah.
And this becomes really, really powerful, because everything we do, for me, is a throat chakra expression. The way we dress, the way we speak, the tone of our voice, the way we stand and show up, like all of these ways that we're expressing ourselves or communicating are linking back to those stories we have of ourselves. That, you know, we can assimilate light or shadow form. That's easy. Like, we can assimilate, but when we have a story around it, that's not possible to assimilate it. That's when we have issue, and that's when it's too painful and we cut it off and we need to do some soul retrieval work. So for me, the most powerful soul retrieval work actually happens at the express level. It's through the stories we tell, both internally and externally, being, you know, belief systems, and then outward into marketing and PR.
That's it. That's it. So, I mean, basically, there's so much that you've just said there, because the first bit that I wanted to really put a spotlight on is the asking element, because I think the dynamics of the male and the female, the yin and the yang. The yin very much is about that sort of feminine, that sensitivity, that receptive mode, and the yang obviously is a masculine, the action, the forward, the focus. But to a large extent in our culture, we've cut those two off. So we've said you're either yin or you're either yang. And so women have been taught to be very yin, very soft, very feminine, very sensitive, very, you know, and the man has been taught to be very yang. And I think to a large extent now, that whole sort of marrying of the two, where we recognize that we are both, that we have those both energies running through us, is a big part of coming back to alignment, more or less, because we've cut off that energy. So when we talk about asking, it's so much on the yang side, or it can be so much on the yang side, to say, this is what I want, this is what I feel. And not because sometimes when we're saying it from this place, we're threatened. And so we feel like we have to make that point. But when we say it from a place where the yin and the yang are kind of like merging and dancing together, we can make our point, you know, and we can say it, and we can be really direct and really focused in what we're saying, but still exactly what you say, vocalize what we want, what we're here to do, what our focal point is.
Thank you so much. There's so much with this. And I think one thing that so many of us, you know, I'm not a woman, but I feel, you know, I try to embrace just as much my femininity as my masculinity, and so many of us, we stay attached to our communication. So what happens is, you know, I see it like we're playing tennis. Like, I go to hit the ball, but instead of letting the ball go to the other person and letting them hit from an empowered place, I run with the ball. And I want to make sure, like, I'm trying to control it, you know? Because I'm so afraid of how they're going to react. And I start taking responsibility for their reaction, which is disempowering to me and disempowering to them. Yes. Like, I can say whatever I want right now, and you can have your own reaction, which I'm not responsible for, and then say whatever you want back. And maybe you're triggered, maybe it's nasty. I'm not responsible for your reaction. I'm only responsible for, when the ball comes back to me, how I want to react to it. And this is where I find a lot of women get really, especially my clients, get really tangled here, is they feel, and our culture has validated for them, to feel responsible for everybody's energy. And so not only are we trying to manage what we want, but we're also trying to manage how somebody else is going to react to what we want. Yeah. And that's an impossible task. We will never know. And more than that, that's what we talked about before, where our solar plexus is going, projecting out, making sure it's safe, seeing what people are doing, and taking on gunky energy right back into our system.
So when we move this energy up and we move it up to the third eye, which is the seat of our intuition, and intuition has got so many nuances to it. It's that sort of the inner voice, the ability to vision, the ability to feel into things, to know into things. When you think of that and you think of your work, because for me personally, the intuitive system is such a powerful navigational system, that part of like the words that aren't said, the expressions that haven't found their form can still be felt, can still be understood. And it's a bit like you were talking about, someone sends you an email and you have to ask whether they actually ask the question, because your intuition has actually really pulled exactly what they wanted to say out of what they've actually said. But when you think of your work and you think of intuition, what comes up for you?
A few things here. This one's a little bit more, like you said, nuanced and more complex. But one thing is, this is my ability to digest raw energy versus communicated energy. So whereas, when people are explicit about what they want, I can understand that from a throat place. But this is the place where I can see what a person's actually asking. And oftentimes this is, in my work, what we're actually appealing to. So yes, we want to be very upfront. We want to be very vocal about what we want. But we're actually speaking to maybe deeper intuitive parts of themselves that aren't quite so conscious. So when we're doing activations, or people feel excited, or they think, oh, I resonate with that person, and we're not sure why, there's an energetic alignment happening there. Maybe on a subconscious level, they are reacting to the energy. So we're dealing with raw energy here. We're not necessarily dealing with as manifested of energy as we were on the other level. And the other thing that I think of when it comes here is, through my work, the brand energies, as I call them, the kind of modes of expression for me being aligned, zany, free, unmistakable, successful, and vulnerable, are actually lenses on the world. So they're how I see the world, how my soul is understanding and learning about the world for everybody else, or the universe. And because of that, I can begin to see where my unique gifts begin to emerge. Because as you're speaking to me, I'll be able to see things that somebody else couldn't, and I can't see things that somebody else may be able to, because I have a unique lens on you, or a unique lens on the whole universe. And this really helps me to tune into my own intuitive gifts and use those gifts to best serve my business and just my life in general. So there's a lot with this energy. It feels a little bit more amorphous maybe than the other energies. But for me, it's a lot more about the intangibles in the world, the things that we can't quite see or hear, but that we just know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So finally, when we get up to the crown, because the crown is our seat of our soul, basically, in terms of raw energy, but in terms of actually accessing our divinity, accessing our higher self, accessing the wisdom of the universe to a large extent, accessing guidance from energetic forms that are outside of our physical realm. All of that comes in with the crown chakra. It's really the spiritual center. So when you think of your work, because for me that's the center that I sit very comfortably in, and and it feels that way for you too. When you think of your work, what comes up for you there with the crown?
Definitely the word divinity feels really strong for me. This is such a center where I feel it can go one of two ways. Some of us sit there so prominently and we want to stay there and we don't want to be embodied because we have that memory of being more than this human form. And we are so connected to our guides and so connected to our resources. And then the other side of it is people who are actually completely shut off from that. And they don't feel divine and they feel really disconnected and they don't fully utilize those resources. And one thing I always recommend across the board is oh my gosh, I would be nowhere if I didn't talk to my guides.
Yeah.
So, like, every night before bed, I say, you do this, you do this, you do this. Okay, I'm going to bed. Good night. And they do their stuff, and they work with me. And there's so much support.
Mm-hmm.
And I often find, interestingly, that this is a place where actually money abundance can come in more, because I always tell people, if we're not fully utilizing our resources, our body's resources, our energetic resources, our front and back chakras, our guides, then if we're not fully utilizing all that's at play, of course we're not going to let more in, because we're not even using what we have here. And this is so important to fully manifesting our purpose and to stepping out as that walking god or goddess and allowing ourselves to bring it all the way down into our root chakra. So for many of us, maybe aren't listening to this, that we don't have an issue here, but surprisingly, there's a huge subset of the spiritual community who actually do feel disconnected from this place. And they're really working to get connected there, but they're not allowing the support in, and they're not allowing that connection or that knowing in. And I do get tripped up in this place. I'll be honest, like, I have this great example. I recognize fully that I'm both the actor and the writer, right? Like, I'm writing the script for myself. I am the divine, but then I have to also act that script too. And there are times when I break the fourth wall. So I was out to dinner recently, and I was talking about how my brother-in-law triggers me, and then I had this moment where I was like, I know Mike cares about this, and this is, like, important to Mike, but I'm so bored talking about this. Like, I'm ready to not talk about this. And it was this really weird moment where I felt like compelled, like I have to keep putting on this front and keeping this role being Mike. But it was this real acknowledgement that I'm so much more than Mike. Like, Mike is a role I'm playing in this lifetime, even well tuned to my soul in this lifetime, so that I can communicate and learn certain things. But this is the seat where I begin to transcend even that knowing and begin to realize that everything really is just an illusion, and that all is well. And it's kind of fun to be able to play that writer and actor at the same time, because when things get really, really overwhelming, which, when doesn't it? When things get overwhelming, I can go back to my meditative state and just be. Yeah. And I think I just am. Yeah. And that's when I can recharge every night at bed, what I get to do. And then I get to come back and be this incarnated soul and learn these certain lessons, remembering that if ever it gets overwhelming, I always have, I always can just be and not have to be in this, like, kind of overwhelm all the time. So there's some of that interplay that goes on for me at the crown chakra in my work, where when we are really connected to that line of energy, when we have that replenishment always coming in, we can give and give much more, rather than just feel drained. So it's really a place that I think many of us, both the polar ends, the crown and the root, are so important for us to be connected to, because we're not being replenished or connected up here. And if we're not down there, we're not being embodied. And so,
yes. Yeah. And that was what I was thinking when you were talking about the infinity of Mike. Because, basically the infinity of Mike is so dependent on the embodiment of Mike to actually function. And so the balance of those two is always what we're kind of like seeking and really aligning ourselves to, because that's when the soul can tick in this world. Mike, thank you so very much. I've absolutely adored this conversation. There's some beautiful insight in there, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this with the community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for holding space for this. I mean, you are such an intuitive goddess, and there's no way that I could have such an amazing dialogue without this container, so thank you.